Hi, I'm Lynn Boland, Director and Chief Curator of the Gregory Allicar Museum of Art at Colorado State University. And this is the first installment of a video gallery talk for the temporary exhibition Cercle Carré and the International Spirit of Abstract Art. This exhibition was organized by the Georgia Museum of Art at the University of Georgia. And I'll add that I was the organizing curator. My previous position was as curator of European art at that institution before coming to CSU as director and chief curator here. So it gave me a great opportunity to bring that show to our audiences, the traveling version. Now, unfortunately, of course, it's closed as I make this recording because of the coronavirus outbreak, but we're going to do our best to bring it to you. So it'll be in a number of installments. There's a lot to cover here, really a lot to unpack, a lot to see. Now, while much of this talk will be off the cuff, I hope you'll indulge me a brief reading from the catalog for the exhibition. This is from the essay that I contributed entitled Inscribing a Cercle. It begins with two quotations, the first by Vasily Kandinsky, the second by Kazimir Malevich. If I have, e.g., in recent years, so frequently and so enthusiastically made use of the circle, the reason, or the cause, is not the geometrical form of the circle, or its geometrical characteristics, but rather my own extreme sensitivity to the inner force of the circle in all its countless variations. Vasily Kandinsky, 1929. When, in the year 1913, in my desperate attempt to free art from the ballast of objectivity, I took refuge in the square form and exhibited a picture which consisted of nothing more than a black square on a white field. This was no empty square which I had exhibited, but rather the feeling of non-objectivity. The square equals feeling. The white field equals the void beyond this feeling. Kazimir Malevich, 1927. The abstractionist group Cercle Carré, Circle and Square, inherited the idea summarized in these two quotations, that worlds of meaning might be contained in such basic geometry as a circle or a square. Founded in 1929 by Belgian artist and critic Michel Sifor, together with Uruguayan Catalan artist Joaquin Torres Garcia and Catalan-American artist Pierre Daura, the group took aim at what its members considered the self-indulgent and illusionistic nature of surrealism. Members including Jan Arp, Le Corbusier, Alexandre Exter, Vasily Kandinsky, Fernand Léger, Piet Mondrian, Kurt Schwitters, Sophie Tober Arp, and many others sought to develop further theories of abstract art first advocated in the circles of Russian constructivism and Dutch Gestalt, in turn having roots in the early abstractions of artists including Kandinsky and Malevich. In addition to publishing a periodical to broadcast its theories and feature its works, Cercle Carré staged an international exhibition of abstract art in Paris at Galerie 23 from April 18 to May 1st, 1930. Although it did not last long, the group in many ways summed up the prevailing theories and styles of the history of modern European abstract art up until that point and set the stage for what would follow. According to Sifor, not a single work sold at the 1930 show, nor were any inquiries made about prices, and the Parisian press virtually ignored it. Scholars now recognize the exhibition as a landmark event in the history of modernism in general and abstraction in particular. It included 127 works by 46 members of the group, paintings, drawings, sculptures, theatrical designs, masks, and architectural plans that have since found their way into the collections of major museums throughout the world. While battling the growing dominance of surrealism, the group also had to explain its own style and meaning. Abstract art remains challenging even now when it is generally accepted as a valid form of expression. The Cercle Carré group benefited from a public somewhat exposed to total abstraction and would have faced a slightly more sympathetic audience than the earliest pioneers of abstraction working in 1912, 1913. But there was still much to explain to viewers and critics. The group shared a common cause, but its range of styles and theories would ensure constant debate among its members. The name and logo suggested the group's strongest allegiance was to total geometric abstraction, but many of the styles exhibited in 1930 are best described as abstracted rather than abstract, remaining representational to varying degrees. Sufor and Torres Garcia founded and largely led the group, but neither sought to dictate too specific a program or issue a manifesto, a common move at the time, seeking instead a kind of coalition of artists associated with different movements and styles. The mission was broad, to support structure and construction in opposition to surrealism. The terms, structure and construction, suggested an emphasis on the composition of a work of art independent of its subject matter, whether or not that subject was recognizable, along with a notion of formal rigor, most often but not exclusively an underlying geometric organization. Cercle Carré focused more on a general approach to art making than on a specific style or meaning, and its co-founders encouraged a democratic spirit. The desire to oppose surrealism made a big tent tactic all the more necessary. The first issue of the group's eponymous journal includes 24 individual statements, all translated for the first time in the catalog from which I'm reading, and its democratic nature, internationalism, and at least relative to the time, egalitarianism and gender equality are evident in all three issues. Although it was centered in Paris and half its members were French, the other half represented another 20 countries in Western and Eastern Europe, Russia, and North and South America. 10 of the 46 artists included in the 1930 exhibition were women. Furthermore, the group, its journals, and the exhibition featured both established and emerging artists. Attendant cultural connections included diverse sources from cutting-edge science and technology to mysticism and the occult, from philosophies of transcendentalism to rationalism. A broad and diverse group focused loosely on ideas of structure and construction, Cercle Carré served as a microcosm of the larger universe of abstraction and its history in the early 20th century. Well, I'll pause for the time and the reading and just give a brief background on how this show came together. It was prompted really by a major gift of art and archival material to the Georgia Museum of Art by Martha Daura, the daughter of Pierre Daura, co-founder of the group. Now, it was originally organized as a large loan show, so the museum was borrowing from other institutions around the world, the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam, Centre Pompidou in Paris, the National Museum of Catalan Art in Barcelona, as well as domestic lenders like Harvard's Fogg Museum, Yale University Art Gallery, Chazen Museum of Art were some of the many generous lenders to that exhibition. And along the way, other works on paper were acquired, which then became the traveling version of the exhibition. So while I'll return to Pierre Daura in more depth later, I did think that he would be a particularly good place to start with this gallery talk and does begin the exhibition. So he was born Pedro Francisco Daura y Garcia. He was known in his youth, though, by Pere, the Catalan name. So he received his art education at Barcelona's Academy of Fine Arts, known as La Dota, where his teachers included José Ruiz Blasco, who was Picasso's father, along with José Calvo. Like really all aspiring young European artists of the day and really aspiring Western artists of the day, he went to Paris to pursue his artistic career in 1914. And there his French identity papers were issued as Pierre, a name he kept until his death. Now we'll cover Daura in more depth later, but jumping ahead to the late 1920s, Torres Garcia especially had recognized what he saw as a need to combat the growing dominance of surrealism, which seems to have bothered Torres Garcia on a number of fronts. Artistically, there was a pretty great divide between the ideas underlying Torres Garcia and other constructivists like him and the surrealists. Both in the end were trying I would always say to find a way for art to help avoid the horrors of another world war. For the abstractionists of the constructivist vein, that was a kind of Platonic sense of a higher ideal, something outside of themselves, a universal language of abstract form. Now, for the surrealists, it was the subjective approach, looking inward to the subconscious. Again, trying to avoid what they saw as one of the causes of World War I think, is at the root of where they're coming from here, both groups. The surrealists saw this over-reliance on rationality as being one of these causes, and were looking for ways around that. But it made for a very different approach, this inward-looking, subjective approach, and this outward-looking, abstracting in every sense approach. Now, on the other side of things, on a kind of personal side of things, Torres Garcia, I think, was deeply offended, especially by the success of the scandal of Salvador Dali and the paintings and works that he was exhibiting around this time, 1928, 1929. And I think Torres Garcia felt a need to respond to that. So first and foremost, really, Cercle and Square was formed as a kind of protest group. But very early on, they realized they needed something to hang their hat on. They needed something to advocate for, something to advance. And that became structure and construction. Now, Torres Garcia knew Michel Sufor, a Belgian poet and critic who was very active in the Parisian avant-garde among these circles. And the three of them, Michel Sufor, Torres Garcia, and Pierre Daura, really began the formation of the group around, for the most part, Torres Garcia's dining room table. Two of the original co-founders of Cercle Carré split with the group. Theo van Doesburg and Jean Elian disagreed with the Big Ten approach that included purism and other abstracted but still representational styles. So they formed their own small group with three others, named Art Concret. Now, the exchanges between these two groups were heated. Van Doesburg wrote of Sufor during the back and forth in their journals that Sufor's intellectual sloppiness was worthy of venal art dealers and critics. At the opening, an argument between Van Doesburg and his former fellow De Stijl artist, painter George van Hongerloo, turned physical. The accounts say they almost fell backwards down the stairs. Now, on the upside, Van Doesburg's exit made room for Piet Mondrian, his former fellow De Stijl leader. The two had their own falling out, which I'll come back to next time. But once Van Doesburg was out, Mondrian agreed to join, which was really a coup for Cercle and Square. There was initially a lot of disagreement over the name. Sufor had suggested it, but there were lots of other suggestions. Mondrian had actually proposed Stop, which went nowhere. Now, Daura, rather than engaging in the verbal debate over the name, set about creating designs for a logo. This exhibition includes the first of 2 pages of Daura's designs. Daura's final design really convinced the group. Sufor wrote that all objection fell away, and Kandinsky wrote what a joy it was for him to see so beautifully composed in black and white his beloved forms. Now, the paintings by Pierre Daura in this exhibition are from the run-up to his mature Cercle Carré period paintings, which were totally abstract. Their meaning derived entirely from the relationships of forms and colors. These earlier works in the period 1928, 1929 are really more purist in style, although showing elements of neoplasticism and Dutch style. What I mean by that is that, as you can see, there are recognizable images, whether it's a vase or a face or a still life. They're highly abstracted, however. They're flattened. There's not this illusionistic sense of space that one would see in traditional academic painting. They're broad, flat areas of color. So in this kind of flattening of regular, everyday objects, we really have works that relate closely to the purist style. And in these broad geometric areas of color, especially when they're arranged in grid-like formations, we're seeing the influence of the style, or the neoplastic style, originating in the Netherlands with Piet Mondrian, really, and advanced largely by Theo van Doesburg. So this is what Douwer was doing in 1927, 1928, and he was being encouraged by Jean Hélion, and especially by Joaquin Torres Garcia. And we'll be taking a closer look at Douwer's development of a totally abstract style, his struggles and challenges, and the particular sources that helped him break through in a subsequent installment of this gallery talk. Our next installment of the gallery talk will be a kind of overview of the different styles involved in Cercle Carré, the different participating members, how those different artists and styles interacted, how they exchanged ideas as they came together around Cercle and Square. And there are lots of other topics to be explored here. So if there's anything of particular interest to you, let us know in the comments, because this is going to be an ongoing series for a while. We'll have a lot more online content coming in the weeks to come. So thank you for checking this out. Take care, everyone.